2023 is over and a new year has begun. You probably have a whole list of New Year's resolutions, such as going to the gym and shrinking that inner tube, which has gotten more enormous thanks to all the Christmas cooking you shoved down your pie hole. And you probably swore to treat your family and friends a lot better. Well, you can add one more New Year's resolution to your list. Hi, SA here, and when I'm not sounding like a complete knucklehead on the computer, I'm also a published author, and I have a deal for you. Remember to get your copy of Glitch, a precarious duo, and its sequel, Glitch, The Future is Unwritten. You can get them on either Kindle or paperback. Both are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other fine bookstores. The links are down below in the description. You will enjoy this crime thriller tale of a kidnapped teen model and a reluctant jewel thief who are on the run from the law while on the treadmill at the gym. And I'm not just some one-hit wonder either. I have more books coming down the pike, so as long as I don't die in my sleep. Stuart? Stuart? You'll see those other books too. Now let's get back to the video. Hello again. SA here. What is wisdom? What is maturity? Well, wisdom is pretty basic. It's basically tells you not to put your hand into a flame, or perhaps not stick your hand into the mouth of a hungry lion. But what is maturity? Well, maturity is basically what happens when a kitten or a puppy turns into a dog or a cat. It grows up, becomes mature, becomes an adult. Same thing with babies. They eventually grow up and become adults. But wisdom and maturity are not, don't necessarily walk hand in hand. A person could be mature but have no wisdom. And a person could have wisdom but are not necessarily an adult. So there you go. Now, anyone who was paying attention back on January the 20th, 2021 was probably hearing the mainstream media making snarky remarks about Trump being removed from office and Joe Biden being his replacement. And one of those snarky remarks was, the adults are back in the room. Now, what does that really mean? Does it mean that before Joe Biden became inaugurated president, the United States was run by children? People who were immature? People who had no wisdom? You can assume that. But what difference 3 years makes? Because you can say what you want about the dreaded Orange Man. I mean, you can say that the guy always shot his mouth off without thinking first. You could say that, his wife squinted too much. You could say that he always wore those ridiculous red ties all the time. But one thing you can't say was that despite the Orange Man's personality traits, you couldn't deny that he had, for the most part, good policies. Yeah. Because back when Obama was there, they had all kinds of restrictions on energy industry. If you were ExxonMobil or Royal Dutch Shell, you saw in certain places you could drill and win. Trump said, no, let's open up drilling on the East Coast, West Coast, wherever. A lot of environmentalists didn't like that. But Trump felt he was doing what he thought was best for the country. And then he said that our border is wide open, letting all kinds of illegal aliens in. And he said, we got to tighten this up because the United States, we may be a wealthy country, but we have finite resources. We can't house, clothe, and feed everyone on the planet. Sounds fair. So he started building the wall. And more, a lot of people get annoyed over that. So much so that they were accusing him of all sorts of disreputable things. Being a neo-Nazi, being xenophobic, and on and on and on. But smart people said that by building the wall, he actually did decrease illegals entering the United States. Did it drop down to zero? Well, no. But it decreased a lot less than it was during Obama. And Obama was referred to as the deporter in chief. Yeah, you can look it up. And then Trump said, we got too many wars going on. We should end these wars. And of course, he did his best. He reached out to the Pentagon and said, let's put our people out of Syria. And at first they said, yes, the boss. But then they quietly undermined him. They said, no, we're not going to remove our soldiers from Syria. We're actually going to add to them. He tried to pull our soldiers out of Iraq. Same thing. The guy got kneecapped. He tried to reach out to the Russians. He felt that it's probably not good for business with the two most heavily nuclear armed countries in the state bickering and feuding amongst themselves. Sounds fair. Problem is, there was too many neocons inside the U.S. government who didn't want that. And they basically made up all kinds of fairy tales about him being the Manchurian candidate, or I should say, the Eurasian candidate. Of course, it wasn't true, but who cared? There were some people who was more interested in having strife and vitriol with the people out there on their side of the world than having peace and prosperity. And then finally, it was North Korea. Now, you can say what you want about the people in Pyongyang. You know, you can say they're scumbags, they're assholes, they got terrible haircuts. But these people, they tend to be very cagey, tend to be very paranoid. Why didn't they build a nuclear arsenal? Apparently, where they're going to get invaded or probably bombed out of existence. Sounds fair. Trump wanted to reach out to him, and he did, twice. Tried to make a deal. You know, a deal. I mean, they may say they're communists on the front door, but he figured they might be Republicans, and he could probably make a deal, a financial deal. You know, offer them, you know, something for something. You know, they get rid of their nukes and we don't invade them. Maybe they can get a little dividend on the side. Problem is, there was a lot of people, too many people, who said, no, we can't deal with the people in Pyongyang. We got nuke them out of existence. Yeah, old Mr. Bolton, Mr. Mustache himself was saying stuff like that. And he was working for Trump. But then the election came. And because of COVID, Mr. Trump lost his job. Well, it happens. I mean, it wasn't like he was the first one-term president we ever had. Remember Bush 41? Yeah. Remember Jimmy Carter? Yeah. Remember JFK Well, of course, he only had one term because of that bloke who put a bullet in the back of his head. But anyway, Joe Biden gets in there. And Joe Biden, let's just say this. He's not known for having wisdom. True story. Because long ago, the old dreaded orange man, back when he was still a businessman, he once spoke to Ted Kennedy. Yeah. And he asked him, who was the smartest man in the Senate? And Ted Kennedy told him. And then he asked him, well, who's the dumbest man in the Senate? And he told him that too. Now, Trump, he never revealed who Ted Kennedy said was the smartest man in the Senate. Now, remember, this was back during George W.'s time. But he did say who Ted Kennedy thought was the dumbest man in the Senate. You ready? Joe Biden. That's right, children. The man who was now the 46th president of the United States and was declared by Ted Kennedy, who was not entirely a stupid person, even though he did have a problem with the drink and women. But anyway, yeah, the dumbest man in the Senate was not president of the United States. And as we soon realized, Joe Biden lived up to expectations. One of the first things he did was to pull the plug on the Keystone Pipeline. And then his minions in the mainstream media started making excuses about why he did it. In the meantime, a lot of people who relied on that pipeline, they lost their jobs. And the people down there in Texas who was going to refine all that Canadian shale oil, they lost the potential customer. So there you go. And then, of course, Joe Biden then started removing all those oil leases that Trump signed off on for oil prospecting on the coastlines. Of course, a bunch of environmentalists loved that, but then it didn't quite work out for the oil industry. And then Joe Biden started retacking on all those damn regulations that Trump pulled back. He put them back in place again. And that soon caused the cost of producing oil to go up. And of course, you know one thing about business knows that if you're a businessman and your cost of operation goes up, what are you going to do? You're going to eat the cost, or you're going to pass on to your consumer? Well, that's what they did. And then ordinary working Joes started noticing that the gas prices were going up. And then the news media tried to lie about it and say, oh, are you going to believe us or your lying eyes? And then, of course, Joe Biden turned to the border. First thing he did was stop all construction on the border wall. And then he let everyone, everywhere on the planet, said that, hey, the border is open, come right on in. And sure enough, just like a Field of Dreams, he opened up the borders, and they came. By the plane load, by the boat load, by the train load. And all the while, Mayorkas, the guy who's supposed to be in charge of the border, you know, Homeland Security Chief, as well as in charge of the damn Border Patrol, he tried to sit there and lie at the Congress multiple times and say that he wasn't doing what he was doing. He kept saying the border was closed, even though he knew the border was open. And to make matters worse, his minions were cutting holes in the border wall that already existed. And to add insult to injury, the mainstream media tried to gaslight everyone to claim that the previous president, number 45, didn't build any border wall at all. And anyone who got eyes in their head and a brain that still works can go out there to San Ysidro, can go out there to Brownsville, and even go out there to El Paso and see that damn border wall that the president put up. And then finally, Joe Biden really stepped in it and bagged up. Because even though he's only been president for about a year or two, he started reversing Trump's foreign policy. One of the first things was he stopped talking to the damn people in Pyongyang. And then, secondly, he tried to restart the nuclear deal that Trump canceled with the Iranians. Now, of course, you can argue back and forth from now till doomsday if that nuclear deal was even worth anything. But most people, smart people, said that it was basically a fool's errand. That Joe Biden's former boss, Obama, gave away too much and got too little. Because he gave them billions of dollars, and the Iranians promised, with their fingers crossed, that they would not build any nukes. So there you go. And Trump, to his credit, said, nah, this deal is rubbish. We need to get a better deal. So he tried to put the people, or I should say the Ayatollahs of Rock and Roll, tried to put their balls in a vice and make them change their minds. But I have to admit, those pesky Ayatollahs, man, they got balls of stainless fucking steel. Very hard to crack. But then Joe Biden, he gets in there and he totally flips the deal. He says, you know what, I'm going to restart the deal. But then guess what? The Ayatollah said, nah, we don't like that deal that we made with your former boss. We want a whole new deal, a better deal, a deal that'll be better for us. And what did Joe Biden do? Did he tell the Ayatollahs to go where the sun, to take their potential there and shove it where the sun don't shine? No. He said, okay. So there you go. And then Joe Biden and his minions, they re-entered the Paris Peace Accord. The climate accords, which multiple people, smart people, said was a bad deal because it put handcuffs on the American economy while it allowed India and China to basically do whatever they want. You know, opening up huge coal-burning power plants, building more and more gas belching automobiles, whatever. And then in the meantime, he tried to force people in America to get rid of their cars and buy electric, even though most people don't like electric cars for a variety of reasons, and not just because sometimes the batteries explode. Sorry, Elon. Sometimes there's no place to charge the cars. And you say, but you see plenty of chargers in the city. Yeah, but what if you're not in the city? What if you're way out in the Mojave Desert and then the battery goes kaput on you? Where are you going to charge the battery then? Yeah, didn't think about that, did they? So a lot of people said, no, we don't want these electric cars. And yeah, as part of the Paris Climate Agreement, that was basically one of the things that we, the United States, had to do. And nobody was buying it. And then, like I said, the big one. The people in Moscow had a bee up their nose about Ukraine. Ever since the coup, a coup that the United States helped engineer, overthrew a government that, while it wasn't necessarily friendly with them, it wasn't antagonistic either, i.e. it was neutral. And all they wanted to do was to talk about the basically the security arrangement that they had in Europe. Because as far as Moscow is concerned, it seemed like they got the shitty end of the stick, which is true, they did. And what did the people at the Atlantic Council say? They basically gave people in Moscow the one finger salute and told them to blow it out their ass. Now, of course, the guy who was there before, back in the 90s, drunk man Yeltsin, he probably would have just shrugged and said, and kicked the dirt and said, oh well. But Yeltsin wasn't there anymore. A different guy was in Moscow, Mr. Putin. And Putin, you can say what you want to his face, but don't expect him to sit on his hands and do nothing about it. And he did do something about it. He invaded Ukraine. Why? Well, it depends on who you believe. Now, the people in the Atlantic Council said, oh, that dreaded Putin, he's trying to recreate the Soviet Union, or at the very least recreate the old Russian Empire. And Mr. Putin said that the people in Donbass and Luhansk, they just want protection because the damn neo-Nazis in Kiev, and let's not even pretend the Azov Battalion isn't the only ones who walk around goose-stepping and walk around with old SS symbols as part of their mantra. And he sent their army in to protect the ethnic Russians, and the people in that region are ethnic Russians, but they live in officially within the borders of what used to be known as Ukraine. So now I'm not going to get into the weeds about all the vitriol that happened after the coup that happened in 2014 in Kiev, but what was happening was that the Kiev regime was dropping bombs and artillery shells on those people every day, killing a whole bunch of them, and most of them weren't even soldiers. So Putin brought in his army and slowly but surely put a stop to that shelling. And man, did the Atlantic Council get really, really pissed. So then they decided, you know what? We're not going to drop a bomb on Moscow. No, that would have been too much. They said, let's put nuclear level sanctions on Moscow and hope the government collapses. Except there was one small little detail with that scheme. These people, including Joe Biden, when he wasn't sitting there in his rocking chair snoozing, somehow presumed that the sanctions were going to shit-can the Russian economy. Except it didn't. And you know why? Because outside of the collective West, the United States, NATO, and whatnot, everyone on the earth basically said, sanctions? What sanctions? And they continue to do business with Moscow. And then right now you're probably saying, but wait a second, we put sanctions on other countries in the past. Yeah, through the United Nations. But these sanctions were not through the United Nations. Therefore, everyone else on the planet had the option of adhering to them or not. And most of the people on the planet said, we like these Ruskies, and therefore we're going to continue to trade with them. And thus, boom. Not only did Russia's economy didn't collapse, it actually grew. And right now, smart people, you can look it up, said that Russian economy in the 2 years since the fighting has been going on in Ukraine has not only grown, but is now the 5th largest economy on the planet. And now, right now you're saying, what? True. You can look it up. I think it's the purchasing index, I think that's what it's called. Purchasing power of the Russian economy, it's number 5 behind the United States, Japan, China, and I think India. And it leapfrogged over Germany, which at the time was the strongest economy in Europe before all this rigmarole happened in Ukraine. And in fact, right now as we speak, because of the war in Ukraine, the damn economies of the collective West have gone into recession. And you say, how is that possible? Because as part of their sanctions against Moscow, they stopped buying Russian energy. We're talking Russian gas, Russian oil, Russian coal, even Russian nuclear products, like enriched uranium for power plants. And wait for it, you would think, but wait a second, didn't these Europeans know that they're cutting their nose off to spite their face? And I'm thinking, yes, I think some of them did, but apparently not enough of them. Because not only did they stop buying energy resources from Moscow, somebody, we don't know who yet, blew up one of the main gas pipelines, the Nord Stream pipeline that stretched from St. Petersburg to Denmark. Blew it up, destroyed it. In other words, it's one thing to put sanctions on someone and not buy their energy. It's nothing to blow up the pipeline. In other words, someone wanted to make those sanctions permanent. And I mean permanent. And then you say, what about the OPEC? Couldn't they buy energy resources from them? Well, they tried. But OPEC, strangely enough, they like Moscow more than they like the EU and NATO. So therefore, they made a bunch of excuses saying that, oh, we don't have excess capacity. Oh, we don't have enough spare energy resources for you guys, so I guess you're on your own. Now, was that true? Depends who you ask. And thus, the United States, because Joe Biden had put our own energy industry in a vice, we couldn't even provide any energy resources for the Europeans. And indeed, anyone who was paying attention just in 2022-23 saw that Joe Biden emptied the strategic oil reserve, which is supposed to be oil for the United States in case of emergencies in order to keep oil prices down. Why? Did he care for the people in America? Or is he just doing it as a scam to fool people to think the oil price, gasoline prices were actually dropping when in fact they weren't? And they say, why we do that? Because there was an election in 2022 and he wanted to basically fool people. And have to admit, it worked. Just enough people voted for Joe Biden's party. And then as soon as the election was over, he turned off the spigot and the gasoline prices at the pump went right back up again. So there you go. Now, of course, right now, as we speak, that war in Ukraine ain't working out too well, especially for the Ukrainians. I mean, their country's all been blown up. Their soldiers are all dead. And right now, the Ukrainians are wondering what they're going to do. Because even though the damn NATO had gave them all kinds of tanks and guns and bombs, it just wasn't enough. Because Moscow had more. They had more tanks, they had more guns, they had more soldiers. And they weren't very incompetent. They weren't incompetent either. They knew how to use them. And if you were sitting there reading the Telegraph or the Guardian newspaper or watching Sky News, even watching Fox News, you would have thought all during the last couple of years that the Ukrainians were winning the war. Well, they weren't. They were losing. Losing royally. And now, everyone from the Atlantic Council to Zelensky, I know I just mispronounced his name, well, sorry. They don't know what to do. And some of them said, let's try to freeze the conflict. Well, anyone who dances a tango knows you need two people. Problem is, the people in Moscow don't want to freeze the conflict. They want the people in Kiev to surrender. And of course, the people in Atlantic Council and of course people in Kiev say, no, we don't want to do that. Well, guess what? You look like you guys got no choice. Either you surrender now, or just like what happened in 1945 when General Zhukov marched into Berlin with the entire Red Army, you're going to end up surrendering later. And anyone who remembers what happened in Berlin in 1945 knows that when the Germans were finally forced to surrender, it hurt a lot. No joke. So now you're probably wondering, how is it that all these disasters happen all at once? Because just because you're mature, like Joe Biden, doesn't necessarily mean you have wisdom. And that also goes for Austin too. And you say, Austin? What Austin? the guy who's supposed to be the defense secretary under Joe Biden. That guy, he had prostate cancer. Hey, it happens. I mean, any guy, anyone with cock and balls knows sometimes you might be hit with prostate cancer. But instead of fessing up to what he had and telling his boss, Joe Biden, hey man, I gotta go to the hospital, man, I got this damn cancer between my balls and I don't know if I'm gonna make it. He tried to hide it. He didn't tell his deputies where he was going, didn't tell his boss where he's going. He just quietly snuck away to have a prostate treatment. And then we only found out when he had complications afterwards. And then they still tried to hide the football from the news media, saying that, oh, he had elective surgery. And of course, anyone who has known people who've had prostate cancer, such as my father, for example, getting treatment for prostate cancer is not an elective surgery. Unless, of course, you don't want to live. You have to go into the hospital and have the surgeons work on you. And then you got to get cancer treatment, chemotherapy or whatever. And I guess finally, Austin, he finally realized that he couldn't hide the football any longer and fessed up. And now multiple people saying that Austin, who's supposed to be one of the top advisors to the president, showed a clear lack of judgment, a clear lack of wisdom. He should have told the boss what was wrong with him and just fessed up. But nope, he decided he was going to play a game of hide the football and hope nobody would notice. Well, people did notice, goddammit. And maybe he should resign. But of course, since he's got prostate cancer, maybe they should give him a little severance package. That way he can pay for his cancer treatments. Just sounds fair. So now, here we are in 2024, and believe me, you won't have to worry about people 100 years from now writing the history of this timeline, because people are writing it right now. And multiple people, smart people, like Tim, yeah, I know I like to quote the guy, are saying that Joe Biden and the people surrounding him have proven themselves to be the most corrupt, the most incompetent, most unbelievably stupid people who ever ruled over the United States. Unbelievable. Even worse than Ulysses S. Grant. Worse than Warren Harding. Even worse than George W. And George W. wasn't particularly bright. I mean, good grief, he ran off and invaded 2 countries, didn't have to invade. Okay, well, maybe 1 country. I mean, the people in Afghanistan, okay, well, they got what they deserved. But anyway. And yeah, and that's another thing Joe Biden shit the bed on. Pulling our people out of Afghanistan. He tried to make a photo op out of it on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and totally screwed it up. Killed several of our soldiers in the process. And God knows who knows how many Afghans. Totally shit the bed on that deal. And now people who remembered that what was said by the mainstream media back in 2021 about the adults are back in the room, I wonder if those people are eating their hat now. They should. Because guess what? Joe Biden, he may be an adult, and the people he surrounded himself with may be adults, but guess what? Those people have the wisdom that God gave a goat. And that's an insult to goats. Yep. Ted Kennedy was right. Joe Biden was the most stupidest man that was ever in the United States Senate. And he'll go down in history as the stupidest man who was ever sat behind a Resolute desk. And it's not just me saying this. Historians who are writing the history in America right now are saying it. And 100 years from now, future historians will be writing that as well. Unless, of course, we elect someone who's even more stupid than Biden. And that can happen. But at the moment, we can't afford any more stupid people in the White House. Nope. These United States can't afford to have any more stupid people in the White House. We as a nation will not survive it. Yep. That's goddamn right. Well, that's all I have to say about people who are in charge who lack wisdom. And that's my opinion.